It's so awesome to actually see a Democrat getting rebuked in public because it almost never happens. Like, when is the last time you guys seen any mainstream American leftist politician entering a debate with a right winger and actually discussing important issues such as the economy or geopolitical issues? It never happens, right? And I don't know if this is just our generation or if it always used to be like that. But unfortunately, the only time you see actual political debate happening is during the presidential elections. And even then, it's more like a contest of shit flinging rather than actually talking about the politics. And it's very sad because modern politics now is pretty much acting in the sense that you have the politician go on a stage and they're reading from a prompter and then they're taking questions from journalists that usually they know what the journalist is going to ask. And the questions themselves, most of the time, are irrelevant. Like, they're do not asking stuff about, as I mentioned before, the economy or, like, should we go to war with this country or another. Instead, the way politics are done is that you are being told what has been decided and you have to agree with it. Okay, well, the politicians have figured out that the scientists have reached a consensus. This is the consensus, and the solution to fix the problem is to give us, the politicians, more of your money and your votes. So, rarely do you get to see left-leaning people being pressed on their issues, and it's really easy to press them because their entire ideology is designed in a way to survive by using censorship and by disabling the comment sections. The moment that they are actually tasked with defending their ideas, they automatically fail. So we get to see sometimes a politician getting heckled in public. Like, someone asks them a question and the politician just runs away. But very, very rarely do you get to see when a politician goes to what they consider to be a safe place, like, for instance, Oxford, and there's someone there that challenges them. So, in this situation, you have Nancy Pelosi saying one of the dumbest things that I have ever heard, which is that populism is a threat to democracy. And I wish I was there because I would have said, my sister in Christ, populism is democracy. Like, populism is a word that her party has co-opted, and it's basically used like racist now, but what it does mean is the will of the people. It's grassroots. It's people contradicting her opinions. Like, that is what populism is. And I want to point out that on the internet and in mainstream culture, most of the censorship apparatus is not pointed towards right-wingers. It's pointed towards populists. Because I have seen leftist populists get censored as well. So, all of this started during Occupy Wall Street, pretty much, when the banks were getting bailed out and people were like, foreclose on banks, not people. And they realized, okay, well, an alliance between right-wingers and left-wingers against the 1% is very bad for us. And that's when this whole diversity, inclusivity, and equity shit started. Because what DEI stands for, this divide et impera, like divide and conquer. So they don't want any more populism, right? Because it's populism versus the elites. And the question is Nancy Pelosi one of the elites or not? So, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was rebuked as an elite during a recent Oxford Union debate where she argued that populism in the United States is a threat to democracy. It's very interesting how democracy just 100% aligns with the Democratic Party. All the time, every time, right? According to the Democrats. It's almost like there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there. But she is a self-described devout Catholic. And she said during the April 25th debate that certain Americans who she considers to be poor souls who are looking for some answers refuse to accept the answers that the Democrats give them on particular topics due to their beliefs about guns, gays, and God. And it's like, well, Nancy, it is true that the human spirit requires answers like, why are we here? What is our purpose? I think at a deep spiritual level, everyone needs these answers. But what is the answer that the Democrat gives them? Well, the answer is that America is racist. It's systemically racist, actually. It's one of the most oppressive nations on earth. And in fact, it should not have any culture or roots or traditions. It's just like an economic zone where transactions happen. And the way human beings multiply is not necessarily by having babies, but the way human beings multiply is by voting Democrat. And then the Democrats open the borders. And through immigration is how multiplications happen. Right, like these are the answers that the Democrats are giving to the Americans. Oh, and also, it should be a hate crime if you leave skid marks on a sidewalk that has a rainbow painted over it, and the punishment should be up to 10 years in prison. This is the free world, right? So you do have these answers, and then she's shocked that most people don't accept them. It has nothing to do with their belief in God and guns, by the way. It's just that these answers are absolutely insane. Like they're mentally unhinged, unironically. It's not that people disagree with them. They just think that the people who are making these answers should be locked up for their safety in an asylum with mattresses on the walls. So it's got nothing to do with the guns. It's got nothing to do with God. Okay, like, but even with the guns, it's like, okay, so no one is above the law. The most sacred document that the law has created is the Constitution, and the Constitution says that the right to guns shall not be infringed. Like it even had the shall not be infringed, right? And your idea is to infringe with the guns. It's like, okay, that's fine, but then you're also protecting the concept that no one is above the law. So which one is it? Like, right? Like if you're acting like a hypocrite, yeah, chances are people won't listen to you. Like, think about it this way. If you ever lived in a village, one of the most respected people in a village is the priest, right? Like, especially an Eastern European village. Like, everyone looks up to the priest, everyone listens to the priest. But the moment the priest becomes a hypocrite, like the moment the priest, let's say, gets drunk or starts whoring himself, even if like people are still Christians and they still believe in God, they just don't believe in that priest anymore because he has become a hypocrite. So anyway, the Oxford Union's famed university holds itself as a defender of free speech. Yeah, right. And has hosted numerous events with U.S. politicians. Marshall argued that the meaning of the word populist has been changed by elites who have failed to align with their own narrative. Like, this one is, oh my god, this is spot on. Right, so you have the elites saying shit like, the world is ending, listen to Greta Thunberg, she is right, we gotta change our lifestyles, we gotta impoverish ourselves, we gotta live in misery for perpetuity because the world is ending, right? So vote Democrat and give more of your taxes. But then you see the same elites that are using this argument, flying around in their private jets, going around on their yachts. So yeah, like, you fail to align with your own narrative. Like, you're not leading by example. And you're looking down at the people that, don't turn off their air conditioning while you sit in a private jet. Like, how does that make sense? So populism has become a word synonymously with racist. We heard ethno-nationalist, we have bigot, we have hillbilly and redneck, we have deplorable, Marshall said. Pelosi had argued in her remarks that contemporary American populism currently had an ethno-nationalist character. Yeah. Like the whole thing is like they don't want to debate the opposition anymore. They're not interested in even having a conversation or listening to their grievances. It's just like censorship and suppression. Like, we have these labels, and once we attach them to you, you're not worthy of consideration, you're not worthy of representation. This is the mindset of the elites. And they're shocked that people do not listen to what they have to say. And look at this. Elites use it to show their contempt for ordinary people. Like, literally, she's creating an aristocracy. And honestly, I want to say that looking from the outside in, America has certain aspects of an aristocracy. Like, you have the Pelosi's, you have the Clintons, you have the Bushes. Like you have these people that, in a democracy, they manage to constantly win elections. And it's in the family, right? Like, you have these politicians, like, the concept of a career politician is very close to the concept of aristocracy. And the interesting thing is, like, when the politician goes old, their kids take their place. So, like, how likely is that to happen? And the answer is, like, well, through the censorship apparatus, right? Like, oh, you're part of the good guys. Well, we're going to make sure that the press doesn't write shit about you. We're going to make sure that the press writes shit about your political opponents. We're going to delegitimize everything that your political opponents have to say. We're going to shower you with wealth. right? Like, that is what happens when you're part of the good guys, of the elites. So he goes out and he says, if anything, Obama argued that he was the populist. If anything, Obama argued that Bernie was the populist, which, by the way, is kind of true. Like, Obama and Bernie Sanders are populists on the left. And you can see with Bernie Sanders, he's getting censored. And Obama, once he actually did get the presidency, he was no different than a neocon. Like, it was the same area. So in other words, I would consider that he did lie to people. Pelosi bristles the comparison between January 6th and the Portland BLM riots. She's basically saying that there is no equivalence here. It's not like what happened on January 6th was an insurrection incited by the President of the United States. Well, yeah, I mean, like, one of them burned down billions of dollars. You know, they burned down people's businesses. Like, I don't know if Pelosi managed to see on Fox News, like, people from those communities being heavily affected by the riots where the police refused to show up. Like, the police had no problem showing up when CNN was vandalized. But when random people had their businesses looted and burned down, they're nowhere to be found, right? The reason she cares about the January 6th more is because it affects her personally, right? Like, some twat even placed his feet on her office, and that is beyond the pale, right? So that is why she cares about the January 6th the most and says there is no comparison. It's because she doesn't live in the cities where businesses were burned down, right? So I'm not really surprised by what she's saying. Today, particularly in America, the globalist left have become the establishment, he continued. I suppose for Mrs. Pelosi to have taken the side of the argument, she would be arguing herself out of a job. Marshall went on to claim that populism is the voice of the voiceless and the real threat to democracy for elites. I 100% agree with him. It's kind of surprising to see this conversation coming from Oxford. I probably don't agree with the guy politically. Like, I probably wouldn't have much in common with his policies. However, what he said to the previous speaker, 100%. Let me know what you guys think, though. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.